Are You Really Going to Eat That? Podcast episode 130. Hey there, I'm your host Wendy Hill and I'm a naturopathic nutritional therapist and expert in female hormone health. I specialise in helping women gain confidence and understand their bodies, allowing them to shine. I'm a huge foodie and this podcast allows me to bring you an eclectic mixture of guests where food and health is our uniting passion. Welcome to March. How are we all feeling? Now, I have to be honest and say that actually February is probably one of my most challenging months. I find that January is kind of start of the year and there's lots going on and it's my husband's birthday and it's our wedding anniversary and there's often, things happening for me in January. And then I get to February and it's a bit like, what have I got to look forward to? It's dark, it's cold, and I know it's only a short month. And lots of people say, oh, it's a short month and it's fine. But I have to say February, I think, is my most challenging. So now we're in March, it's getting lighter in the morning, certainly around, in the UK where I live, it's getting lighter in the mornings and it's definitely making a difference to me and improving my mood. So if you have been feeling a little bit kind of low in the last sort of few weeks and so, then hopefully now this kind of change, getting ready for spring, certainly the bulbs are coming out and that really makes a real difference to me. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about sleep. And that's because the topic in my Fabulous and Female membership for March is sleep. And what we'd like to do is try and kind of keep it all in sync. So you'll be hearing a lot from me and some experts around sleep this month. And if you're follow me on my socials, and if you're not, why not? Go find me at Hillstart Nutrition. Then we are talking quite a lot about sleep. So this week, I thought it would be really interesting to kind of look at why do we sleep? Is there a reason for it? And yes, there is. Of course, there is. And I think it's a difficult one. I think scientists have, been looking into it for quite a long time, and I think that the thing that we need to really understand is there's not just one reason. We don't just sleep for a single reason. That's hardly surprising, is it? But it is multiple reasons. And scientists kind of looked at, different angles and, actually also looked at what happens when humans or other animals are deprived of sleep. And that is the key question, isn't it? We know that sleep deprivation, well, firstly, it's a sign of torture. You're watching all your spy movies and what do? They keep people awake for hours and hours, days and days on end, and it breaks their will. We know it's detrimental to our health, but it is quite difficult. There is the theory that kind of the evolutionary theory that, Neanderthal man started sleeping as a protection measure. So that being able to be quiet and still at nighttime, we don't have good night vision. So we need to protect ourselves. And a protective measure would be to be very still and very quiet. Now, I am sure there are many of you going, still quiet when you sleep? Not in my house. And I would say, yeah, no, not in our house. My husband, not quiet and not very still. Now, he would probably say that I snore louder than him, but, he's not on the podcast, so he doesn't get a say. But, we in theory are able to stay sort of quieter and more still for longer periods. Like I said, that kind of, is up for question with some of them. But there was that protection measure. But we have been living in houses and settlements for a very long time. So you would think that if that was the reason, then we would no longer need to sleep or no longer need to sleep as much. And that hasn't happened. So then that shows us that there are many other reasons, and that might have been, part of it, but it certainly isn't the reason. Now, sleep, we know, allows the body time to repair and rejuvenate itself. We certainly know that in gut health. I talk to my clients all the time about, the power of restorative sleep for gut health, and also about making sure that is what you're doing, that you're not digesting food. So, eating earlier in the day so that when you're sleeping, you are actually repairing the gut. And it's shown, that as a nutritionist, of course, I'm going to say that the gut is at the core of it, but it has been shown that it is a driver, poor gut health is a driver of chronic illness, and gut health is directly correlated to quality of sleep. So goes without saying, really. The Harvard Medical School, they've got a sleep division, And they've collected quite a lot of evidence and lots of studies. And some of the things they've sort of collected is shown that humans and animals lose immune function when we don't have enough sleep. Now, with animals and with animal studies, they found that animals will just die. Obviously, they're not going to take it to that level with human studies, but they have shown that in animal studies, animals die from sleep deprivation. So we can sort of use that correlation to assume that if we were going for extreme sleep deprivation, that this could be, cause of death, extreme that we're talking about now. We also know that, there are lots of restorative functions, muscle growth, tissue repair, protein synthesis, and our growth hormones. These all occur mostly when we're asleep, and some of them only when we're asleep. So thinking about that muscle growth, that muscle repair, you need that tissue growth. So it's a huge amount of repairing and renewal of cells. And it's often those cells that we kind of burn through quite a lot, those ones that kind of rejuvenate quite quickly. So like the gastrointestinal lining, the cells inside there have a very, very fast turnover. And so we need to repairing and renewing them regularly. We also know that our brain is really affected by the quality of sleep that we had. Now, while we're awake, we produce this kind of a chemical called adenosine, and it's believed that the levels of adenosine lead to our perception of being tired. And when we sleep, we clear adenosine. So that kind of makes sense. Also, caffeine blocks the action, so it keeps us alert, keeps us awake. That's one of the modes that it uses. So this is chemical called adenosine, which we produce. So it's about clearing those. So again, if you are feeling constantly tired, if we aren't sleeping enough and we're not clearing adenosine efficiently, is it a build of it that makes us tired when we wake up? There's also kind of like studies that show that there's this correlation between sort of changes in the structure and repair, that we kind of almost like I like to think about it as kind of a little bit of a library. And like during the day, we take all the books out and we leave them all out all over the surfaces. And at night time, what we do is we kind of put them away. We reorder where the books are meant to be, so we can find them again the next day. We clear the surfaces and we kind of repair that phenomenon. It's known as brain plasticity, and it's to do with our kind of brain development. And particularly in infants and young children, we can see that it affects this kind of these neural structure. I mean, babies should be sleeping for like 13 to 14 hours a day, and half of that time is spent in REM sleep, so that deep restorative sleep. And they really believe that this is a real strong link between them, how much sleep we get, how much REM sleep we get, and our brain plasticity, and not just in children, in adults as well. So you kind of like the plasticity, that you think about it as something that can move, that can adapt, that can change. And it's really thinking about it. And I think, in practical terms, just think about how sleep deprivation makes you feel. You can't, how does it affect how you learn, how you concentrate, our mood as well. Certainly for me, if I've not had a good night's sleep for a couple of nights, and this is something that I think is really key when we're talking about perimenopause and menopause. Sleep deprivation or poor quality sleep is a key symptom in the perimenopause. And then we talk about things like brain fog and poor concentration. But if we are not helping that restructure, improving the plasticity of the brain, and we're having poor sleep, of course we're going to get brain fog. Of course, it's going to be difficult to remember things. Of course, we're going to lose concentration because our brain isn't repairing overnight. It's really interesting, I think, to think about that link between that kind of midlife health, particularly for women, and, how sleep deprivation could be a driver for many of the symptoms. And this is something that we talk about an awful lot is, yes, that is a symptom of perimenopause, but what are we blaming things on the perimenopause where actually it's something else? So I've got a poor quality of sleep, this is why I'm getting brain fog, so by improving my sleep that will improve my brain fog, rather than just, oh well, it's menopause, I'm gonna have to put up with it. Is it about doing things to improve your sleep? Going to bed early. Now, this is my favorite one that I talk to clients about. And there are studies, and I've linked to the study in the show notes. If you want to go to the show notes, there's a study that shows that going to bed earlier significantly improved people's health, particularly their immune system, and it reduces inflammation. And inflammation is something that I talk about all the time, and it's quite a modern phenomenon, and inflammation just drives chronic illnesses. And when I often deal with clients, one of the first things we'll talk about is reducing inflammation. Lots of the things that we put in place, I'll be talking all the time about reducing inflammation. And it's just that it like heat, it's damage to the body. Inflammation is. Now, these are drivers. So poor immune system and inflammation, drivers of chronic illness. We want a good functioning immune system, don't we? And so if going to bed earlier improves our immune system, makes sense, really, doesn't it? What I also love about this study is it showed that you couldn't catch up on your sleep. So it's not a case of going to bed later and then sleeping later. The key factor in this study was that it was the time you went to bed that improved. So kind of going to bed at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at the latest was the key factor in improving both your immune system and reducing that inflammation, so supporting that health and well-being. And I just think that's fascinating. And I talk a lot about, kind of that every half an hour is worth an hour. And I think this is kind of where that kind of analogy comes from, is, it's that showing that it's that time before midnight. And we don't know why, really. Is it to do with the circadian rhythm? Is it to do with the fact that it's dark and we should be going to bed when it's darker? It's not clear, and it's very difficult to do studies around these kind of things. We have to kind of often sort of use it from a questionnaire point of view, like, when do you go to sleep? When do you wake up? What is the quality of your sleep like? And then measure those health factors. And of course, we can't rule out that it's going to be other things. But it's really difficult to pinpoint it and say exactly this and exactly this. But I think it is, it makes sense. And it's really key that we do have these studies that will show that there is a correlation, and then to go back and think about it ourselves and use our logic to kind of go, well, is this logical? If I have a really bad night's sleep, how does that affect me? It's logical, isn't it? We know, yes, we can power through it. We've all been there, but long term, we know it isn't. We can see it from our friends, from our family, from our children, from our family members, kids, like that whole saying, oh, they've gone overtired, and they're grumpy and stuff. We all know how it affects us. And I think it's about remembering with children, what did you do with your children to help them get better sleep, and how did improved sleep improve their well-being? And then translate that into yourself. So thinking about our brain health, our digestive system, our immune system, all makes sense, doesn't it? And getting to bed earlier. So that's it for me this week. It's a little short one, but I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about sleep. And next week, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you some tips on how you can improve your sleep. So some really practical tips, lifestyle, some nutrition tips, and a few kind of herbs and things thrown in there as well. So if that made sense to you and you're now going, I need to sleep more, go to bed earlier, first things, prioritize sleep, second thing, third thing, tune in next week and I'll give you some additional tips. That is it from me. I am looking forward to talking to you next week, and we've got some guest experts the week after. So I will see you soon. Thank you for listening to the Are You Really Going to Eat That podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your family and friends? And the best way to help me get out to a wider audience would be to leave me a review. So if you've just got a couple of minutes, if you popped into iTunes and just scroll down to the bottom, click 5 stars, of course, and leave me a review, that really helps our ratings. And to make sure you get every episode in your inbox on a Wednesday as it's released, remember to click subscribe. Thank you so much for your support. Tune in again next week for the latest episode.